Did you really think you belonged here? The words sliced through the golden glow of the ballroom like a knife. Laughter rippled across jeweled throats and champagne glasses, bouncing off the marble floors. Amara stood frozen, her tray slipping in her hands. The sting of spit still wet on her cheek. The wife of the millionaire, draped in silk and dripping in diamonds, smirked as if she had just swatted a fly. Oh, don't look so shocked. People like you should be used to humiliation. The crowd erupted. Some chuckled softly, others covered their mouths with feigned sympathy, but their eyes glittered with delight. Amara's fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the effort it took to remain still. She lowered her gaze, the very picture of submission, though deep inside her silence pulsed with fire. The millionaire's wife tilted her chin high, adjusting her necklace with exaggerated grace. See, this is what happens when you let the help walk too close to royalty. A man in the crowd leaned to his companion. Cruel, isn't she? He whispered. Cruel? The companion sneered. No, this is entertaining. Amara inhaled slowly, her chest rising against the storm of laughter. She did not wipe her face. She did not move. The silence was her only weapon for now, and in that silence, tension grew like a storm waiting to break. Phones lifted discreetly. Cameras blinked red. Every cruel smile and every whisper was being captured. No one knew it yet. Not the millionaire's wife, not the sneering crowd, but the woman they mocked tonight was not who they thought she was, and one sentence from her lips would bring this glittering empire to its knees. The laughter refused to die. The millionaire himself, seated on his golden-backed chair, lifted a hand for silence. His watch glinted, his rings sparkled, and his authority filled the room. Come closer, he said, his voice dripping with false kindness. Let us see the face of the girl my wife chose to decorate. The crowd chuckled at the word. Decorate. Like Amara was nothing more than a wall to hang shame on. She hesitated, but the wife snapped her fingers sharply. Well, don't waste our time. Amara stepped forward, each footstep echoing against the marble. The lights burned bright above her, too hot, too exposing. She kept her gaze lowered, though every part of her wanted to meet their eyes, to sear her truth into them. The millionaire leaned back, sipping his champagne lazily. You're quiet. Too quiet? What is it? No clever excuse? No tears? Someone from the crowd called out, Maybe she's mute. Laughter roared again. Amara's lips parted slightly. No, she whispered. Just one word. The sound, small as it was, carried through the hall like a crack in glass. A ripple of unease threaded through the laughter. The wife scoffed loudly, desperate to reclaim the moment. She thinks her silence makes her strong. Poor thing doesn't realize it makes her look weak. But the unease had already started. A murmur rose in the back, someone whispering, She doesn't seem weak to me. The millionaire slammed his glass down, the sound sharp, silencing the whispers. His smile hardened. Perhaps we should test her strength. The wife clapped her hands with delight. Yes, let's. The crowd leaned forward. Hungry for more humiliation, Amara stood in the center. Her hands still trembling, but her eyes, when she finally raised them, were steady as stone. The room didn't see it yet, but the game had just begun. The ballroom dissolved into silence, but inside Amara's mind a floodgate burst open, her vision blurred, not from tears, but from memory. Rain, cold, heavy sheets of it drenched her thin dress as she stood on the cracked pavement. The glow of a luxury hotel towered above her, its glass doors reflecting wealth she could never touch. She had been only 12. Her mother's hand squeezed hers, trembling, desperate. Just one night, her mother whispered to the security guard. Please, she's only a child. Just let her stay dry. The guard's eyes slid over them with disgust. His umbrella tilted away, making sure not a single drop of rain touched him. Move along, he barked. This isn't a shelter. Her mother's voice cracked, raw and begging. Please. But the guard shoved her back. Her knees hit the pavement, water splashing up like the world itself was mocking them. That was the first night Amara understood the cruelty of the world. The first night she learned that silence could wound deeper than words. The memory shifted. Another scene, Another night, Amara was standing outside a restaurant's glowing windows, her stomach twisting at the sight of food she couldn't afford. Inside, families laughed, their silverware glinting under golden lights. She pressed her palms to her belly, trying to silence the ache. Her mother's voice had always been the same. "Don't cry, Amara. Don't show them your pain. The world doesn't care about your tears, only your strength." But strength was hard to hold when hunger clawed at her bones. Still, she held it. She learned to swallow the bitterness, to let silence become her shield. The flashback bled into another moment, years later. Amara is sweeping floors at the same hotel that once rejected her. She was 17 now, her hands raw from scrubbing, her feet aching from endless hours. Guests brushed past her without a glance, their perfume filling the air like reminders of everything she didn't have. One night, as she mopped the lobby, she looked up and froze. There, at the grand staircase, stood a young woman in torn shoes, soaked from the rain. Her dress clung to her body, ripped at the hem. She looked lost, desperate, and humiliated. It was her. The same woman who now stood across the ballroom, dripping in diamonds. The millionaire's wife. But back then, she was nothing. A girl begging for help, just as Amara's mother once had. Amara had watched her plead with the manager. "Please, just for tonight. I'll do anything." "I have nowhere else to go," the manager sneered, brushing her aside. Guests laughed behind manicured hands, mocking the girl's desperation, and Amara, holding her mop, had watched in silence. Her heart twisted, not with pity, but with a strange, heavy understanding. For once, the cruelty wasn't only hers to bear. That night burned into Amara's memory like fire, the look of shame in the girl's eyes, the tremor in her voice. It was a mirror, a reminder, and a warning. The memory snapped. Amara was back in the present, in the glittering ballroom. The same girl now towered before her, dressed in silk and gold, pretending her past never existed, pretending Amara had not seen it all. Amara's breath steadied. Her silence was no longer about survival. It was power. Every cruel laugh in this room, every sneer, every glass of champagne raised at her expense, it all fed the fire she had carried for years. The crowd shifted, restless. The wife's hand trembled around her glass, her mask cracking wider with every passing second. And as Amara stood there, calm and unbroken, one thought echoed inside her. The world had taught her silence, but now silence would be the blade that cut them all. She lifted her chin, her lips parting, ready to reveal the truth no one in that room wanted to hear. The screen of a phone zoomed in closer. The crowd leaned forward, breathless. And then, her voice broke the air. "You should thank me," the wife sneered, her words dripping with poison. "I could have had you thrown out like trash." The crowd chuckled nervously, some hiding smiles behind champagne glasses. The cameras zoomed closer. Everyone wanted to see how far the humiliation would go. But Amara didn't flinch. Her breathing was steady, her eyes locked on the woman's face. Calm, cold, cutting. Her voice came low, but it sliced through the ballroom like glass. Strange words. Coming from someone who once begged a hotel lobby for shelter. The laughter stopped. The wife's smile froze, brittle as porcelain. What did you just say?" Amara's gaze didn't waver. She spoke each word with precision, each syllable landing like a strike of thunder. "I was there. I watched you, drenched in rain, pleading for one night inside. I saw the way they mocked you. Do you remember? Or have you buried it under diamonds?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. A fork clinked against a plate. Suddenly, every eye in the room was on the wife, not Amara, her face drained of color. She stammered, "That's a lie. I don't know what you're talking about." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. The guests leaned forward, whispers darting like sparks across the ballroom. "She remembers. Is it true? Could that really be her?" One man lowered his glass slowly. "I remember hearing that story." The wife's mask cracked further. She tried to laugh, but the sound broke halfway, brittle and hollow. "You think anyone will believe the word of a maid? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." But Amara only tilted her head, her voice calm as stone. "Nothing? Then why does the memory of your shame still haunt you so deeply? The silence that followed was crushing. The wife's jeweled fingers fumbled at her necklace, pulling at the clasp as if the diamonds themselves were choking her. For the first time that night, the crowd wasn't laughing at Amara. They were watching the wife, watching her unravel. A respected guest, a man with a stern voice and weight in his tone, finally spoke from the back. If she's lying, prove it. His words echoed like a gavel, cutting through the tension. All heads turned. Cameras zoomed closer. The wife's lips parted, but no words came out. Amara didn't need to shout. She didn't need to move. Her silence now was louder than any scream. And in that silence, the truth lived. The wife's knees seemed to buckle slightly, her hand gripping the edge of the table for support. Her eyes darted, searching for escape, but found only walls of stairs pressing in on her. The crowd's whispers sharpened, slicing her dignity apart piece by piece. She was homeless? She begged? She lied to us all these years? The wife raised her chin, forcing a broken smile, but the tremor in her jaw betrayed her. She's making it up. She's jealous. Pathetic. Amara stepped forward, closing the space between them. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried across the hall like thunder. I could speak every detail. The color of your shoes, the exact words you said. Do you want me to remind you here in front of them all? The wife froze. The crowd leaned in, and Amara, calm, steady, unshaken, stared into the woman's trembling eyes. The power had shifted. Everyone could feel it. But before the wife could answer, before the crowd could erupt, a voice rang out from the back of the hall, firm, commanding, and impossible to ignore. Enough. All heads turned, and there, stepping into the spotlight, was a man whose reputation carried more weight than the millionaire's fortune ever could. Enough. The single word carried weight like a stone dropped into still water. Every murmur in the hall dissolved. From the edge of the ballroom, a tall figure stepped forward, Senator Harris. His name alone carried power. A man whose voice could silence boardrooms and whose approval could crown or crush reputations. The cameras swiveled instantly, catching his sharp gaze as it fixed on Amara, then on the trembling wife. He adjusted his glasses, slow and deliberate, before speaking again. I do not enjoy interruptions, but I despise lies far more. The wife's lips parted, desperate to explain, but no sound came. Senator Harris gestured lightly toward Amara. Repeat what you said. The crowd leaned closer. Champagne glasses froze midair. Amara's voice was calm and steady, not a crack, not a tremor. I saw her. Years ago, rain pouring, dress torn. She begged for shelter in that very hotel. Gasps broke again through the hall. The senator's eyes narrowed as he studied the wife's face. Is it true? His tone was a blade, not loud, not harsh, but carrying the weight of judgment. The wife swallowed, her throat bobbing. Her painted smile trembled at the corners. It was a long time ago. I was young. Her words faltered under the crowd's hungry stares. She tried again, her voice rising in desperation. It doesn't matter. I am not that girl anymore. But the senator's hand lifted, silencing her instantly. It always matters, especially when you spit on the dignity of another while pretending you never drank the same bitter water. The room erupted in whispers. Some nodded in agreement. Others stared at the wife as though seeing her for the first time. The wife's chest heaved, rage and panic colliding in her eyes. She's lying. She's only a maid. Why do you believe her? Senator Harris turned back to Amara, his gaze steady and unwavering. Because truth does not tremble. The words landed like thunder. The crowd stilled. Their laughter and their mockery are all gone. Now they looked at Amara with something else. Curiosity, respect, awe. The wife staggered back, shaking her head violently. No, this can't. You can't all. But her voice cracked, drowned out by the power of silence. Amara stood in the center of the room, chin high, face calm. She had not shouted. She had not begged. Yet the ground itself seemed to shift beneath her feet. The senator stepped closer, lowering his voice but ensuring every microphone caught it. Your cruelty exposed you. Her strength exposed the truth. This room will remember tonight, not for your wealth, but for your shame. The wife's hand trembled so violently her glass slipped, shattering against the marble. Shards sparkled at her feet like broken jewels. Gasps rose again. Phones captured every angle, and the moment froze like a scene carved into history. Then, slowly, Senator Harris turned back to Amara. His voice softened. But it carried the same command. You worked here, didn't you? Years, if I recall. I heard of a young woman. Quiet, relentless, and who rose from nothing to manage events that even my office attended. Was that you? Amara's eyes flickered. She gave a single steady nod. The room inhaled as one. Guests who once sneered now whispered with admiration. Some even lowered their glasses in quiet respect. And then the senator, with the weight of every camera recording, declared, "Then tonight, everyone here will remember your name." The wife's knees buckled. Her pride shattered in front of the world. But before the silence could settle, before dignity could be restored, a new sound cut the air. The millionaire himself stepped forward, his jaw tight, his eyes burning. He had stayed quiet too long, but now his pride was at stake, and he would not go down without a fight. The sound of polished shoes striking marble cut through the murmurs. The millionaire stepped into the circle of light, towering over Amara. His diamond cufflinks caught the glow of the chandeliers, flashing with every movement. His jaw was clenched, his smile sharp, but behind it burned fury. He raised a hand, silencing even the whispers. Cameras swung toward him like obedient servants. The room held its breath. My wife has no need to answer to staff, he sneered, his voice smooth but dripping with contempt. This girl, he pointed, his finger slicing through the air. This maid thinks she can stain the reputation of my family with bedtime stories from the gutter? Laughter erupted, nervous, forced, but loud enough to echo. A handful of guests clapped, desperate to stay on his side. Amara didn't move. Her eyes stayed steady, locked on him, as if the glitter of his wealth meant nothing. The millionaire's smile widened at her silence. He mistook it for fear. You see, she has no proof. No one of value would believe her. She should be scrubbing the floors, not standing in front of people worth more than she'll ever touch in her life. He leaned closer, lowering his voice into a cruel whisper meant for her, but caught by every mic in the hall. Know your place. Gasps shivered through the crowd. Phones zoomed in, capturing every wrinkle of his sneer. Amara inhaled, slow and steady. She didn't answer him. Her silence was sharper than any words, but Senator Harris's voice cut in, calm and deadly. Careful. The louder you shout, the smaller you look. The crowd shifted again, their weight sliding toward Amara's side. The millionaire snapped his head toward the senator, eyes narrowing. You'll take the word of a maid over mine? The senator didn't flinch. I take the word of truth wherever it stands. The room trembled with the weight of it. The millionaire's smirk cracked, frustration bleeding through. He raised his glass high, spinning toward the crowd. Let's not waste our evening on pity tales. Shall we toast to real success? But the glasses didn't rise. Faces stayed frozen, eyes locked on Amara. His hand wavered mid-air. He forced a laugh, sharp and hollow. What, none of you? Do you all believe her now? No one answered. The silence was deafening. Then a voice from the back whispered loud enough for the cameras to catch. She hasn't lied once tonight. The millionaire's face darkened. He turned back to Amara, fury now fully unveiled. You think you've won because you made her cry? You think silence makes you powerful? He stepped closer, his breath hot with rage. Prove it. Right here, right now. Tell them who you are. The room tightened, the crowd leaning in, the tension unbearable. Amara's eyes lifted, calm, unbroken, and in that moment, everyone knew. The storm was about to break. The ballroom was silent. The millionaire's challenge still hung in the air, sharp as glass. His grin was wide and cruel, convinced that power, wealth, and intimidation would crush her the way they had crushed so many before. But Amara's eyes didn't waver. Her voice was steady, soft enough to force the crowd to lean closer, yet strong enough to pierce every heart in the room. You want me to prove myself? Very well. Let me remind you who I am. Gasps rippled. Phones lifted higher. The millionaire's grin faltered. Amara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the air, every word heavy with history. For years I worked under this roof. I scrubbed the marble you walk on. I ironed the silk you flaunt. I lived on scraps while planning every event that made you shine before these people. Murmurs broke out, guests exchanging shocked looks. A woman in the front whispered, "She was the one who organized the gala last spring." Amara's eyes burned, her voice rising sharper now. "I carried trays while you carried pride. I endured whispers, insults, and long nights so your world could look perfect. And what did I do with those years?" She straightened, her chin lifting like an invisible yet undeniable crown. "I built something of my own, step by step, day by day. I earned enough to host weddings for celebrities who wouldn't even take your call. I built my name with sweat and silence while you built yours with mockery and spit." The crowd erupted in whispers, the sound crashing like waves. The millionaire's face flushed red, his mouth opening but no words escaping. Senator Harris's voice rang out above the storm. "I have heard of her company. It is true. She has risen higher than most men born into privilege ever will." Phones turned, flashing, capturing Amara in the center of the room. Calm, proud, untouchable. The wife staggered back, her hand covering her mouth. The truth weighed on her like stone, dragging her down in front of everyone. The millionaire tried one last strike. He slammed his glass down, the sound splintering like a shot. "She's lying. She's nothing without us. Without my money, she'd still be scrubbing floors." Amara's gaze cut through him, sharp as steel. Her reply was a blade he never saw coming. "Without your money, who would you be?" "I survived with nothing." "You, with everything, are still empty." The room gasped. The millionaire froze, the weight of her words hammering him into silence. His jaw trembled. His fists clenched. But there was no laughter, no applause. No crowd to back him now. The power was gone. Phones captured his humiliation, the trembling in his hands and the sweat beading on his forehead. He was no longer the man in control. He was a man stripped bare, his pride shattered under the weight of truth. The wife's knees buckled. She fell, trembling, before Amara. Tears streaked her flawless makeup. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, stop. Don't say more." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, cries, whispers. But Amara only looked down at her, calm, almost sorrowful. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried across the hall like thunder. "Now you know what it feels like." Silence. Pure, crushing silence. Senator Harris raised his voice, commanding the room one final time. "Tonight will be remembered. Not for wealth, not for power, but for dignity. True greatness is not measured by what you own, but by what you survive." Applause thundered through the ballroom. Not polite claps, but raw, rising cheers. Some guests even stood, their respect undeniable. The millionaire stayed frozen, pale and trembling. His empire of arrogance had crumbled in seconds. Amara turned, her posture tall, her steps steady. She didn't need to gloat. She didn't need to say another word. Her silence spoke louder than any victory cry. And as she walked out of the hall, heads bowed in respect, one truth was carved into every heart present. Dignity cannot be bought, and silence, when wielded with strength, can shatter empires.